So give me 1 minute and it should be all set. All right. Can someone check if we are on, if ours has started, please? Can someone check the live stream if and if you can hear me? Sairam.
Sairam, I am checking. Thank you.
Okay. I think we can start the study circle with 3 ohms. Om. 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 A prayer. Dear Swami, we are so grateful to be able to meet here together in your presence today. While we are here together studying your word in your Bhagavata Vahini, we ask that you open our ears and hearts to whatever it is you want us to learn. Please speak through each one of us and help us progress in our spiritual journey. Jai Sai Ram. Sai Ram, everyone. Hope you can hear me okay. Please feel free to unmute and speak up because I may not be able to see the chat. So that is one thing that I would request all of you to feel free to unmute and speak. Of course, let's be respectful, speak from our heart, and of course, the focus here should be to bring about certain changes in our own life. So with that in mind, we can move on. This is just a little review from last session. I know Venkatji was able to record some of the conversations. So I think I got the gist of what was discussed last week. And I will upload what I can for our YouTube channel so that all the 100 sessions will be available for later at later time for anyone's review. So last week I think the discussion on chapter 30 continued on avatars and their purpose, and there was discussion on Shravanam, and I believe that led also into right action, which is dharma, and the purpose of the avatars coming in to establish dharma and protect the liberties. So upholding a lot of discussion happened around how hard it is to follow the right action, and how courage is something that one needs, and courage is something that can be learned from various avatars in various forms. And then a lot of discussion around dharma, that one cannot judge other person's dharma, and that there are a lot of gray areas from our human perspective. And with that in mind, we should do the best we can in a given situation. Many of the examples that Swami's students have spoken at different times, and I think a lot of those were brought about the hospital, about Swami's Grama Seva activity, and I think detachment was something that was brought up as a key to be able to take right action apart from being courageous. Then of course the discussion went on to talking about Maya and its role. So I've seen that today. Before we move on, are there any questions or anything that I missed that anyone would like to share? And I'm hoping you guys can all hear me okay.
Yes, Sairam, we can hear you clearly.
Perfect. All right. Okay, so let's move along. So today I just thought we can continue with chapter 31. And we can continue on the other discussion once we address the same topic at a later time, which obviously is going to come back again and again. And so we will go ahead and listen to chapter 31 and continue our discussion for relevant topics. So with that,
Bhagavatha Vahini, Chapter 31. Doubts and Questions. When Setsuka heard this answer, he said, O king, since your heart is merged in Shyamasundara, the Lord Krishna, I am pleased so much that you can ask me all the questions that trouble you. I shall give you appropriate answers and explanations. I shall thrill you and heighten your yearning for Shyamasundara, the charming lord with a complexion of dark rain-heavy clouds. Parikshit was filled with delight at these words of the master. He said, O illustrious preceptor, what qualifications have I, which entitle me to put questions to you? Instruct me as you think best. Tell me what I most need during these critical days. Teach me what is most beneficial, most worthy of attention, most important. You know this more than I. Discourse to me, irrespective of my asking and desire. Of course, doubts pester me off and on, since I am bound by the temptations of delusion and ignorance. When such arise, I shall communicate my doubts and misgivings and receive from you curative explanations. I pray that you should not attribute other motives to me. Do not weigh my attainments. Treat me with affection as if I were your son. Transform me into a quiet, restful person. Let me present before you, however, one doubt that has been with me for a long time. Are the experiences of the individual in this body directed by his own nature? Or are they directed by some of the consequences of deeds in the past? Then there is another, O Lord. Well, you said that from the navel of the primal person, the Purana Purusha, a lotus arose and blossomed, and that all creation originated from that lotus. Now, did God appear with limbs and organs like the individual Jivi? Is there any distinction between the Jiva and Brahma, the individual and the personified absolute? Let me also ask another question. On what basis are the past, the present, and the future differentiated? And the fourth, which deeds of the Jivi lead to which results and consequences, which statuses in the future? The fifth, what are the characteristics of the great, the Mahapurushas? What are their activities? By what science can we know them? The sixth question, what are the stories of the amazing and charming incarnations of God? Then the seventh, how are we to distinguish between the Krita, Treta, and Dwapara Yugas or ages? How can we name a yuga as such? The ninth question, what are the disciplines that one must practice in order to merge in the inner soul, which is the universal soul? And the final 10th question, O Lord, what are the Vedas and the Upavedas? Which Upavedas are attached to which Vedas? Please tell me the answer to these, as well as other subjects deserving attention. Master, I surrender to you. There is no one else who can enlighten me on these and other points. Therefore, save me from the perdition of ignorance. The king fell at the master's feet and prayed for grace. With an affectionate smile, the sage said, Rise up, O king. If you pile up these many questions all in a heap, how can you understand the answers? Moreover, you have not slaked your thirst or eaten any food since long. Come, eat some fruits and drink a little milk at least. They are the privileges, the rights of the physical body. With a weak body, you may pass away in the middle with your doubts unsolved. So, take some food, Setsuka ordered. The king replied, Master, those whose last days have come, should they prefer the food that nourishes falsehood to the food that grants immortality? How can I pass away in the middle, though the body may be famished, when I am imbibing the nectar of immortality, and when you are filling me with the exhilaration of tasting sweet panacea for the illness of death? No, it will not happen. Even if the angry Shringi had not cursed me, even if the snake Takshaka had not deputed to kill me after 7 days, I would not pass away in the middle while listening to the stories of the Lord. I listened to them without thought of food and drink. My food, my drink, are the nectarine stories of Lord Krishna. So, do not think of my food and drink, O Lord. Make me fit for the highest bliss, the supreme stage of realization. Save me from downfall. I am prostrating at your feet. The king shed tears and sat praying to the preceptor. The sage said, Listen. In the beginning, Brahma shed light on the world manifested by Maya or delusion. Brahma willed that creation might proliferate. But a voice from the void above, the Akasha, warned. Tapas is the essential base for everything. Through tapas, delusion will disappear. At this, Parikshit intervened. He asked, What is the meaning and value of tapas? Please enlighten me. Sukha took this interruption kindly. He said, Son Parikshit, tapas means sadhana, discipline, spiritual exercise. It is through tapas that the great processes of creation, preservation, and destruction are happening. Tapas is the cause for the realization of the self. That is to say, when the mind, the intellect, and the senses are subjected to tapas, or the crucible of disciplinary exercise, the self will stand revealed. I shall tell you about this technique of tapas. Listen. The mind, the intellect, and the senses are ever bent towards exterior objects. They are perpetually turned outward. When some sound from the external world strikes it, the ear hears it. As soon as the ear hears it, the eye attempts to see it. When the eye sees it, the mind desires it. Immediately, the intellect approves the idea and sets about to acquire it as quickly as possible. Thus, every sense runs after external objects one after the other, one supporting the other, restless and miserable. One must bring under control the mind, the reasoning faculty, and the senses which roam aimlessly behind objective pleasures. One must train them to take on the task of concentrating all attention on the glory and majesty of God, to follow one systematic course of one pointed discipline. Bring them all and lead them towards the higher path. Their unlicensed behavior has to be curbed. They must be educated by means of japa, dhyana, and good works, or some other dedicatory and elevating activity that purifies. This process of purifying the inner equipment of man in the crucible of single-pointed speech, feeling, and activity directed towards God is called tapas. The inner consciousness will be rid of all blemishes and defects. When the inner consciousness has been rendered pure and unsullied, God will reside therein. Finally, he will experience the vision of the Lord himself within him. O King, what can one picture grander than this? The great sages, the Mahatmas, all engaged themselves in tapas, and as a result have gained continuous and rare spiritual splendor. Why, even the wicked demons, Ravana and Hiranyakashipu, won mastery over the material world and acquired their tremendous powers of destruction through the arduous discipline of tapas, directed along aggressive channels. If only their efforts were directed along sattvic paths instead of rajasic paths that they preferred, they could have attained peace and joy of self-realization. On the basis of the underlying urge, tapas is classified into 3 groups: tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic. Of these, for the visualization of God, the sattvic is most effective. Vashishta, Vishwamitra, and other sages acquired amazing powers through their sattvic tapas performed with pure unselfish motives. They rose at last to the status of Brahma Rishis too. Tapas is classified into another series of 3: mental, physical, and vocal. You may ask, which is the most important of these 3? I must tell you that all 3 are important, yet if the mental tapas is attended to, the other 2 follow. The person bound by objective desire will try in various ways to fulfill them. He is a slave to his senses and their pursuits. But if he withdraws the senses from the world and gets control over their master, the mind, and engages the mind in tapas, then he can establish swarajya, or self-mastery, or independence over himself. To allow the senses to attach themselves to the objects, that is the bondage. When the mind that flows through the senses towards the outer world is turned inwards and is made to contemplate on Atma, it attains liberation, or moksha. O king, all things that are seen are transient, unreal. God alone is eternal, real. Attachment with objects ends in grief. God is one's own reality. That reality, the God in you, has no relationship with a changing, transitory objective world. He is pure consciousness only. Even if you posit some relationship for it, it can only be the type of relationship that exists between the dreamer and the objects seen and experienced in dreams. At this, the king Parikshit started questioning thus. O master, on this matter a doubt is bothering me. In dreams, only those things that have been cognized directly while awake appear, and so there must be reality as the basis of the false appearances, isn't it? While experiencing the dream, all the objects are taken as real. On waking from sleep, it is realized that they are all unreal. But this is the experience of us, men. Can God too be deluded? Again, if objects are one and of uniform type, then it can be said that Maya deludes and this is the effect. But they are manifold and of multifarious forms. They all appear real and true. So, how can these be compared to the dream experiences? Sukha was induced to laugh at this question. O king, Maya itself has caused the multifarious forms. This is clever stage play, a kind of fancy dress. The objective world or nature assumes manifold forms through the manipulations of Maya, the deluded urge. On account of the primary impulse of delusion or ignorance, the gunas, qualities arose and got intermixed, and time manifested with a change, and all this multiplicity called the universe appeared. So, the jivi must dedicate himself to the master of this delusion, the director of this play, the manipulator of this time, the actor who sports the gunas, types of behavior, groups of qualities, bundles of attributes, the mother of all the worlds, Maya. He must fill himself with the understanding of the immeasurable power and glory of the imperishable Absolute, Akshara Parabrahma. He must immerse himself in the bliss derivable therefrom. Then he sheds all ajnana and can be unattached even when he uses the creations of Maya. The king was struck with wonder at these words of the sage. He said, Lord, How did this creation first happen? What is the original substance which Maya caused to proliferate? Sukha elaborated these points. He said, creation is happening from beyond the beginning of time. First, the lotus arose from the navel of the primal person called in the scriptures Narayana. From this lotus the Lord himself manifested as Brahma. Then Brahma felt an urge to look at all the four quarters, so he developed four faces. Brahma became aware that he must activate himself so that creation can happen. So he seated himself in the Padmasana posture of yoga and entertained the idea of all this creation. O Parikshit, the mystery of creation cannot be unraveled so easily or understood so quickly. There can be no cause-consequence chain in the activities of the Absolute. No one can examine or inquire successfully into the creative faculty and achievements of the Supreme, which is omnipotent and omniscient. King, when I was just attempting to answer the questions you had framed earlier, you came forward with another. Perhaps you felt that I might forget to give the answers for those in my eagerness to answer the latest. No, you will certainly be enlightened on all the points during the ensuing narration of the Bhagavata story. All your questions are within the bounds of the Puranas. When these consoling and satisfying words were heard by him, Parikshit queried, Master, what are Puranas? What are their contents? How many are they? Sukha replied, the texts that elaborate the truths that are enshrined in the Vedas are called Puranas.
Okay, Sairam. So that is this chapter, and I thought we can start with. There are many topics in this chapter that can go into deeper discussions, but since we are online, and I personally thought it would be easier to kind of engage in what is the easiest of all topics that we can actually talk about, because the most important here, and I think Swami spent a lot of time talking about, is tapas, spiritual discipline. So, with that, what is your understanding of true spiritual discipline? How does Swami redefine tapas in terms of devotion, and he even brings up selfless living? And these are just a few questions that came to my mind, but this is open for everyone to discuss. So, how does tapas help to overcome ego, desire, attachment? And in today's world, how can we practice uh, tapas or sadhana as householders or students? Sairam, is anyone?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sairam, Bhavani.
I can't hear. Okay, yes.
Yeah, Sairam, Bhavani. Can
Yeah.
you break down the questions? There are already so many questions in the book.
Right. So let's just take it one at a time.
Yeah, take one at a time. Are you starting with spiritual discipline or tapas? What is it?
So, what is true tapas? How
Oh,
does Swami redefine tapas in terms of devotion and selfless living? I think that's what he focused on, but
yeah.
I could be wrong. Yeah.
No, in the book, very well he explains, Sukha, that tapas is what spiritual practice, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
what we understand. Like in Puranic time, they did all kind of tapas, all the rishis and even Arjuna and like kings like that also did tapas. What is the purpose of the tapas? It's a self-discipline and mainly to achieve the spiritual liberation. Everything leads to that, and
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
and it
so
takes a lot of discipline. Yeah.
right. So, how is that different from sadhana then? That is also spiritual discipline in
Yeah,
English
it is.
terms,
Yeah,
right?
See, in the book, actually, he talks about the tapas, the 3 types of tapas. Okay? In Bhagavad Gita, also chapter 17, it is explained about the tapas. That is only bodily, that is a sharira tapas, vanmaya tapas, and manasa tapas. That's what the book also he says, right? That is one with the austerity of the body.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and the speech and the mind. There are 3 types of that how we can do the tapas. What are the Sharira tapas is obviously keeping our body clean, and we practice what Swami's teachings like truth, non-violence, worship of God, all kind of that, 5 values we can practice. That is Sharira tapas. Vanmaya is the with the speech, which says like kindly speak to others, not to distress, and be truthful. All those in and recitation of prayers, mantras, all that. And then that is walk, the speech, discipline. For the mind, purity of thought, observers of silence, self-control, those kind of things. So these are the ways we can, if we think modern days of tapas, how we can do it. This makes it easy for us to understand in what ways we can practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I really think so. So when you were saying, so we moved on to the next question while we were talking about this. So anyone else has
Oh,
anything to add? No worries. That was the point. So it's okay. Yeah.
Sairam,
Yeah.
tapas, as I understand, is to withdraw from the senses, right? To overcome the senses. Isn't that the purpose of tapas? So I think in the chapter also
Says
Swami
that.
talked about it. So yeah, while we so that means overcoming the senses. So the whole purpose of tapas. So you asked the question about what's the difference between tapas and
Yes.
sadhana.
Mm-hmm.
Sadhana is towards that. I think tapas probably is a more intense practice, and so that's why if we take the example of olden times, whatever rishis and others did, they took extreme steps to withdraw from the senses. So probably they went to some secluded place so that they don't have opportunity to succumb to the senses. Sadhana is, in my understanding, is lesser. Tapas is probably an intense sadhana. That's how I can see the distinction. But otherwise, I don't know the difference between sadhana.
Yeah. That was my question on that. Yes.
Yeah, I think it makes sense that tapas is more, intense, and sadhana might be 101 class, and the tapas will go to 200, 300 level of a college course. It mainly it needs intense, and in the book it says, single pointed speech, feeling, and activity directed
Yes.
to what's called is tapas. So it's a more intense practice.
And I also, he talked about Vishwamitra and Vasishtha
Right.
being selfless. But on the same note, he gave examples of Ravana and Hiranyakashipu, which
Exactly. Yeah.
so it is confusing to say. So
No,
tapas can go either
no,
way.
no, it is not. Because though they also, Ravana and Hiranyakashipu also did tapas, just because that is a good point. Just because somebody does the tapas, how do they use it? That makes the difference, right? So Ravana and Hiranyakashipu didn't use it for the good of others. They used it in a destructible way. That is why, even though they did the tapas, he says it is in the tapas also 3 types he talks about: sattvic, rajas, and tamasic.
Yes.
Right? Yes. So what their action, Ravana and Hiranyakashipu, that action was rajasic.
Yes.
They used it in for fame, power, those kind of things. Whereas Vishwamitra and Vasishta, their tapas was sattvic. Okay, it is towards goodness, peace, kindness, those kind of things.
Right.
So there is a difference. When they do the rajasic, that tapas, like Ravana, they couldn't control their senses. They acted in a passionate way, and they didn't benefit anybody. Only destruction came out of it. So that's the difference.
Saira, so when you say they used,
Yeah.
what did they get to use? So
Yeah,
when you do
see,
the
they have the
tapas,
powers. They all gain some power, right?
yeah, that power.
Right. Yes.
So
So it is like a fire. Simple example. You can use the fire for protection or destruction.
yeah,
A lot of them did that. They did tapas, and they got boons from gods and Indras and everybody. But then some used it for the benefit of the world. Some used it for the destruction.
Yeah. So somehow, so coming back to where you ended this, only because I think getting into the I don't know, definitions of these terms versus actually talking about how we can learn something from this.
Mm-hmm.
What is our practical approach to something like tapas? Is that the sadhana, like our Gayatri sadhana, for example, because that is the most recent one. So this is as a community we did it, so everyone can relate to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that we can talk about? Does that come even close to it? What is it that distinguishes that in today's world? You know, how can it help us?
Or the sadhana?
Yeah, sadhana, spiritual discipline in general, right?
Yes, yes.
We all did for certain time, then we kind of lose track. We go back into our usual life.
Okay. So
That
that brings us to the qualities of the spiritual discipline, the quality of our practice. Don't you think so? We did sadhana, of course,
yes,
and whoever did wrote something about it. How many of us are still practicing it to begin with?
yes,
And the impact of the sadhana, is it still with us or it is gone the day it ended?
right.
See, all these are up to us again. Okay. Just by doing sadhana, just by doing tapas is the one step higher. Even if we take up a tapas, what it comes to is how much we practice, what we do with that, you know. So those are the things we need to focus on. Just because doing a sadhana doesn't mean anything if you don't put it into practice.
Agreed. Okay. Anyone else has anything to add? Okay. So just I'm going to skip over to what Swami says. You know, how can one know that our spiritual practices are progressing? They are not ego or inflation. We had talked about it. This also came up in the last discussion. Someone said that to do right action, you have to be aware of how your ego is impacting a certain situation. So, so coming back to that, what is it that you need? What are those qualities that Swami is talking about that gives you the signs of inner growth? I thought it was Swami talked about purity. So that's why I thought it was purity. In fact, it's all three P's that he always discusses.
Yeah, Swami says purity, he says, Pavitram is the true character of a human being. That
Correct.
is purity.
That's
Right?
what I
Purity
yeah.
is Pavitram.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is purity? Purity is like, again, we have purity of heart, right?
Mhm.
In our again in our speech and action, thoughts. Trikarana Shuddhi, Swami says, right?
Yes.
That thought, word, and action in unity,
Unity. Yeah. Mhm.
right? I read about this. He talks about, he gives the example of charcoal. If the charcoal doesn't burn, okay, then it is just a piece of coal. It's useless. It's just sitting there. And he says, jaggery also, if it is not sweet, it is also, a piece of an object. It is, nobody appreciates it, nobody could enjoy it. The same way, he says, um, human being has to have this, he has to uh, practice the eternal dharma, which is purity, that is thought, word, and action. He says, without this, man is only a human, but not in his
No.
true nature.
Mm.
He that is not his true nature.
Right.
So that's what he says about purity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just throwing it out there because it's not easy to have purity of heart. It's very hard process. At least everyone thinks we are all pure because we engage in certain austerities or we do certain things that makes us feel good. That reflects as, oh, we have a pure heart.
Mm.
It's very hard to shed those old patterns of thought is what I.
Yeah.
I am.
Yes,
I,
Ira.
oh, I had difficulty in accessing the microphone, so I wanted to say so. Finally, I had to change my device, and finally, I'm into it. Um, so I do want to address what is true tapas. In the by definition in the text,
Mhm.
uh, anything that you look outwards for an answer, that's attachment, and that's not going to give the answer. So you hear something, the eyes search for it, he gives that example, and then
Yeah,
the eyes looks at it and say, I want it, and then
yeah,
you want to possess it, and then as soon as you get it, you don't like it, so you want the other thing. So that is, basically looking outwards is not a spiritual discipline. That true
very
tapas
nice.
is looking
Yeah, thank
inwards. So that is the
well said.
first definition
Yes.
I can see. And the question that you are asking now is, even our spiritual practices, if
Yeah,
that is, really triggering our ego, oh, I did this, so I
yeah,
should get something. It is
yeah,
still ego defined. And so it has got to be totally selfless, and it has, that is when it reaches that purity. And you don't measure it with somebody else. You don't show that you have done something. So all that, any ego inflatory techniques will not help. So that's what I feel is defined as a pure action, pure sadhana.
yeah. Very nicely put. Thank you so much, Shankarji. Anyone else has anything to add?
See, Swami also says, right, unity leads to purity, purity leads to
Yes,
divinity,
divinity.
right? Right,
Mhm.
right. So there are examples who were, for like a devotees who practiced, this purity. Ordinary people, like we can say Valmiki, who was a hunter, right? And then
Yes.
he became, wrote Ramayana. And Kuchela, he was a poor man just because he went to school
Yes.
once upon a time with the Krishna. But
Mm-hmm.
then he was a pure soul. He also got Krishna's grace.
Mm-hmm.
And Dhruva and Prahlada, they were children, but they had this intense, that tapas in their heart, in their purity in their heart. They could see Narayana. Right.
Right.
And then Sabari, that Shabari was what, a tribal woman, illiterate.
Yeah.
Did she get that grace of Rama? Just because of the purity, the pure love she had for the divine. So that if we can, the only thing, if we practice, but it is the hardest to have that. I keep harping about thought, word, and action. we can practice,
Yeah.
if we can put all our effort into that, that makes it as our tapas. I think we can progress.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, every little step is a progress. Again, there is nothing to undermine any step towards in the spiritual direction. That is not what I mean. But definitely tapas is not something of. So how is that tapas related to today's world? Is
Sai
that
Ram,
yes,
back to the tapas question. One more thing,
yes,
let's compare. Umar quoted, all these great souls, and then you have
yes,
in the text, you also talk about Hiranyakashipu and Ravana.
Ravana.
I mean,
Yeah,
they also went in, tremendous spiritual discipline, and they had tapas, and they also appealed and appeared, God, Lord appeared to them and gave them the boons that, made them so powerful. But important point there, that was missing was selflessness. So they are all thinking of, I need to achieve this power so that I can control the world. And so the selflessness is, I think, is a very important quality, for the purity to take place.
Yeah, you missed that. We talked about that. That's what the Rajasic in the tapas, that section of Rajasic tapas.
he was.
Yeah, we discussed that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
that is true. Mhm.
Sairam, isn't egolessness a requirement for tapas? Can one be egoistic and
great question.
I mean, what I don't know is if we talked about Ravana and Hiranyakashipu,
Hmm.
whether they were egoistic when they did the tapas, or they did the tapas and gained that whatever power, and then
That
they
made
became
them.
egoistic
Yeah,
That
because they got the power. They
Well, the
uh,
Hiranyakashipu, episode at least talks about he wanted these powers so that he can actually get more powers than the god himself. So he said, I cannot get death, either in day or night. I cannot get death by man or animal. He
yeah,
combined all these things. So his life, he tried to, he used his ego and desire to figure out every possible way by which he cannot be killed, so he can get all the power. So that is, I think, the spiritual discipline was very strong, but then it was also ego driven. So I think it is, in his case, is a good example of where you can actually misdirect it. In fact, many mystic people, they can do the tapas and get a lot of powers, and then misuse the power. So I think they are all examples like that. And, when Sujata's father, when he used to talk about, when you get deep into these meditations, you can actually get those powers, and if you stop there, you can actually start misusing them. So, um, so that is why that egolessness is very important to achieve the final goal. But if you stop there, then you can actually be powerful and cause more damage, and that's what those guys did. So, ego could still play a role, and still you could be getting a lot of power, and you can follow the spiritual discipline. That's what I feel. That is
yeah,
why the selflessness is a very important quality.
yeah. For the world, for that you need purity. So all the characters that we talked about just now, Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, they probably did not have the purity at heart that gave rise to more Rajasic thought processes.
Yeah, and yet they were true tapasvis.
Well, so yeah, that really confusing because we think tapas should be, or tapas is someone all hail and mighty, but that is not the case.
Yeah, so I think we may have to go back to the text where they explain, Swami talks about these. He
Yes.
talks about, them also doing tapas.
also in tapas, there is a sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic, right? We said sattvic is a no-brainer, all good qualities and all, like Vasishta and Vishwamitra.
Mhm.
they were doing, right? But the Rajasic, we talked about Ravana and Hiranyakashipu. Also, the Tamasic one, here you are talking about Hiranyakashipu. He can fall into the Tamasic nature of the tapas also.
Yes.
Because that what is Tamasic tapas is like it is a spiritual uh, discipline or spirituality they practice, but at the same time it's a confused notion of, they have that, it hurts them and the others also. So in that way they are filled with some kind of ignorance, about what is good, what is not. So I feel that they qualify for both rajasic and tamasic nature of uh, the human beings, the tapas part of it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think if you focus on the Rajasic and Tamasic, then
Right, they
you
qualify
can
for.
still get the discipline and all that, but then you may even get powers, but then you is misdirected.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. For me, it makes sense. Why they did what they did.
I think that's why Swami very clearly said in this chapter, of course, that there is different types. Just because you perform or do tapas doesn't make you sattvic. How you handle that power is what makes you sattvic, basically.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anyone have anything to add, or we could just move along to a short quote by Swami, because we just have about 10 minutes, but I think we can at least get started. We'll come back to this topic if anyone needs to add something, even on Saturday. But let me just read out today's quote, and this is on purity, just because that is something that Swami talks about as being as an important aspect. So Swami says, embodiments of love. There is only one thing you have to offer to me today. Pray that people in all countries, may the entire humanity, should be happy and at peace. Loka samastha sukhino bhavantu. Let all the worlds be happy. Then alone there will be real unity. Do not wish merely for the peace and prosperity of India alone. Pray for the welfare of all countries. All are our brothers, whether they are in Pakistan or America or anywhere or elsewhere. Whether you believe it or not, realize that I am able to attract people from so many countries because of my all embracing love. If every person observes three things, he will be one with Swami. You will experience the divine in you. As the following three are in me, I can declare firmly about them. They are three P's: purity, patience, and perseverance. These three are in me and around me. Anyone with these three qualities will be unafraid wherever he may be. The most important quality is purity. Today, everything is polluted. Water, air, and all the five elements are polluted. As a result, the mind of man is also polluted. How is purity to be achieved? Fill your minds with thoughts of God. Dedicate all your actions to God and consider God as the inner motivator. Contemplation of God is not a matter of derision. You need have no fear on that account. You must have full faith in God, who is the universal sustainer. He is the protector, not the punisher. The punishment you get is the consequence of your own action. Therefore, chanting the name of God, doing bhajans, and performing good deeds, engage yourself in service of your fellow beings. Nourish love in your hearts. Love will drive away all bad thoughts. It will promote the spirit of forgiveness. When the sun rises, all the buds of lotus in the lake do not open out in full bloom. Only those which are full grown can blossom. So the rest have to bide their time and grow. Okay, Sairam, this is a small quote of Swami's that actually talked about three P's, and I brought in the world because there is a lot of unrest, stuff we always keep hearing in today's world. So, how can we truly live the prayer, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, in our daily lives? In what ways can we expand our love or practice to expand our love to our community or country, and what practical actions can develop us with this feeling of unity with all humanity, as Swami is talking about. I mean, I know there are multiple questions, but basically, how can we live the prayer?
Sairam.
Lord, Sister?
So I'm going
Yes,
to start off by
yes,
just take our own lives,
yes.
okay, and we pray, and we want something to be done, okay, and then we want success, and then we pray, success comes, then you say you are very thankful, you are feeling very happy.
Mhm.
When same thing, the success does not come, how can you say that is also a good thing? Most of the time, when we do not get what we thought we should get and we pray, then you go there, take the other route. You didn't give me, you didn't, I prayed
Yeah,
for you, but you ignored me. So that is basically, the thought when you think of some other country as being, not the way it should be, uh, then that itself is creating a problem. Everything should be the way it should be. If that is the attitude we take, then it is kind of easy to develop that community feeling. That's what I feel.
Sairam.
Sairam, very well put. Yes,
Yeah.
Venkatji, please.
See, when you look at persons, see
Mm-hmm.
the challenge or the problem we have is we associate the actions with the persons. If we delink the actions from the persons, then let's say we don't agree with somebody's actions or their words or their behavior, we attach, and that's why we say we don't like that person. So if we can delink those from the person is divine, so we love that person, but we don't agree with their actions or words. So I think that is the challenge, and if we can delink that, and if we can put an effort to delink that, then we should be truly following Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu.
Very nicely put, Sairam. Yes, I agree. And that is a challenge to kind of delink or disassociate a person from the action. Because we are such sense beings, it's very hard to not look at the um, not have a visual of who it is. And I think we are all first to look for who to lay the blame on. That is so important to everyone. Who is at fault?
See, normally, even if we don't agree with somebody,
Mm.
if we delink this, then
Mm-hmm.
we may be really able to help that person or come up with something that is fruitful out of that,
Yeah,
instead of because the moment we attach that action with that person, then usually you don't end up with any positive solution. We have a negative. Either you hate that person or you don't like that person, and the other person doesn't like you, so it goes negative. So instead, if we love that person but then don't like that action or don't agree with that action, we may be able to talk to that person and still communicate and maybe come up with something positive. So I think it's a sadhana by itself. If we can recognize that whoever we don't agree with, if we can recognize that, and
mm-hmm.
I think we should be able to dealing this and then come up with something positive. That's what I think.
The power of alternate thought that I forget the name of the brother who talked about that alternate reality.
Yeah,
That will help in this kind of situation. So a very typical example is driving on the road, and somebody
yeah.
cuts across, and then immediately you are putting thinking about that. If you had we try to look at that face of the person who did that, and then you want to associate everything with that person. And this is something in the heat of the moment we all do in driving. But just, the alternate thought is, oh, maybe there is something very urgent that he has to do, some very, emergency for which he is rushing, and he's probably not paying the attention. And you suddenly, convert that thought, you know, like that, that helps.
Absolutely.
Mm,
And yeah,
sorry.
just like
No, Soumya is here. She was giving an example that she doesn't agree with that. Why don't you share?
Yeah, no, I'm a little further from the speaker. So what my thought is that, yeah, like when Shankaran said about this, you don't know somebody and that person cuts through. We don't know
Yes.
what it is. I get that once done. But if a person has the habit of doing the same thing, know that is them, that is their personality, they have come with a set of karma. So we have to understand that, and for loka samasta sukhino bhavantu, you need to understand this, and you don't
Accept.
but not accept, because then that is going to cause a big issue. You have to either, if that person is just harm for you, then keep away from that person, because then they are going to disturb you in so many ways. But if they are going to cause a problem for the society, then we need to take the right actions, so that the peace is there in that society. That is my thought. Because you just cannot say, you cannot say, oh, this person is this, and it can be loving, because they are going to cause a harm to that society, right? Which is not going to give peace to that society. So you have to understand the nature of the person. If that is the nature of the person and that is harmful for that society, you need to take actions for that.
Right.
So, Sairam, see, if we take even Mahabharata, for example,
Right.
did Arjuna love Duryodhana?
I'm assuming that he did, because he's pictured to be such a sattvic person.
Correct. What about Bhima?
No idea. Obviously, he was not ready for Bhagavad
Yeah,
Gita. So
Bhima and Duryodhana were just fighting with
yeah,
each other, right? So now, did they practice Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavanta? I don't know the answer to that, but could they have done? I don't know. See, in other words, are we? I mean, I know that. I mean, can we delink the actions?
yeah.
Can we delink the person from the actions and still love them? See, it's
For
a
that, you
tough
have to be
challenge.
God. I think that's what defines God.
Okay.
Because yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, Sairam, separating the person from their action is very, very hard for us, because as long as we are dealing with the body mind concept, operating on that level, it is not going to be that easy just to say, oh, this person is really good at soul level, he is Brahman, but he is saying this, he is doing this, so it doesn't matter. That we are not there yet. So what we can do is, sometimes the person who is talking, behaving, acting in certain way, they say that it is a reflection of your own self. Okay. So in that case, what I think is, instead of going around correcting other people or telling them, we look at ourselves and see what is it in us that maybe that made the other person behave this way, or what can I do in myself, how to correct myself if I have these qualities. That would be better than going to the level of separating person from action and all those everybody Brahman. We are not there. Our spiritual practices are not at that level right now. So maybe when we reach that level, okay, and then maybe we can say, everybody is the same, the actions doesn't matter, he is Brahman. That's my
But
thought.
but I think what this points out is separating the person from
No,
action actually
no,
helps us to
it is
pray
not.
for them.
No, it
It
is
does
good
help.
for us, Ma. It's good
Yeah.
for us. But we have to admit, we are all, enveloped in ego. So I
Yes.
don't think
Yes.
our ego is going to let us, or we are going beyond our ego to see that divinity in other person. Okay. And we are not going to separate the person from the action. Practically speaking, that is the truth. That is what we are living every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we may say, okay, he is going in a hurry, but are we practicing that? that kind of magnanimous acceptance and understanding in our life. If we are honest with ourselves, we will find that.
So I want to give a practical example. So this happened recently in our, at work. So somebody is not performing to, the extent that it's required. The job is not being done well, and you need to as a supervisor, you need to let go of that person.
Right.
And so here is a case where, you don't want to really cause harm, as a person, but his action requires that you need to do something. His action requires that you do some action. You need to take some action. And so you can only talk to them and, give alternatives and say, hey, you're not performing. And, if this is not continuing, it's not going to improve. Here is the timeline I'm giving you. At the end of it, I have to do what I have to do. But, you need
Yeah.
to improve on. So that happened recently to one of the employees. And finally, we gave him a lot of ropes, and he just, misused it so much to the point that, never showed up for work. And when his supervisor called him and said, hey, you haven't filled up your time card, you haven't shown up for work, what's going on? He said, I'm very busy, don't bother me. That was the answer he gives, and never
Yeah.
got back with what exactly is going on. And finally, uh, they had to inform human resources and say, you decide what action, and they sent him a letter and said, okay, you're dismissed.
Yeah.
So, you know, uh, you still try to, make sure that he's doing okay and all that, but, you really cannot help him to come back and, serve him with love in the job. That is, sometimes you have to do the action, but don't, at least don't think ill of the person. That's all. That is the
Oh,
best.
yeah. Sairam, I'm sorry, but we are 2 minutes over today. We will have to end the study circle here, but we can continue the discussion on this. We still haven't reached to the discussion on purity. We can do that, and we will continue our other topic discussion for chapter 31. Thank you so much for your participation today. Let us end with Om and three Shantis. It is just our life application this week to make a note of how many minutes one is spending watching or listening to spiritual topics on a daily basis. This is with respect to the Shravanam discussion that we've had. So with that, let's end. Om Shanta Shanta Shanti. Sairam, thank you all for your participation and for being here today.
Saira.
Sai Ram.
Sairam. Sairam.
Bye.